Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Xian Ziwen's hands were trembling with rage. He Kaitu rushed forward and attempted to console him. Teacher Xian, please don't be angry. Little junior brother must be very tired to have fallen asleep like this. He Kaitu definitely knew why Xian Ziwen would be so angry. He hated it when his disciples did not focus on the work at hand when making soul tools. And falling asleep was definitely the biggest sin. Even if the person who was sleeping was Huo Yuhao, Xian Ziwen would explode in rage. Or rather, it was precisely because the person who was sleeping was Huo Yuhao that caused Xian Ziwen to fly into a rage. My poor little junior brother, why did you fall asleep? Even if you wanted to steal a nap, you should at least have been more careful, and not gotten caught. If looks could kill, Huo Yuhao would probably have withered there and then. After glaring at Huo Yuhao, Xian Ziwen started to look around as though he was looking for fighters who could help him beat Huo Yuhao up. Recognizing Xian Ziwen's actions, he Kaitu stepped forward and hugged Xian Ziwen before pleading, Teacher Xian, please don't be rash. Please don't be rash. Even at this stage, he Kaitu was still controlling his voice out of fear of waking Huo Yuhao up. One could see how much brotherly love they had for one another. But very soon, he realized that Xian Ziwen's body had stiffened. Kaitu thought that the anger might have harmed his teacher's body. Let go of me. Xian Ziwen started to speak in a very strange tone. Teacher Xian, please don't be rash. I know Yuhao failed you. Why don't I wake him up for you to scold him? Let go of me first. Xian Ziwen growled. No. I won't. You're a titled Doluo. What if you kill Huo Yuhao? He Kaitu might be pleading, but his voice echoed the determination in his heart. I won't hit him. Xian Ziwen replied coldly. Really? He Kaitu was a little doubtful of what he had just heard. If you still insist on not letting me go, the first thing I do once I break free will be to chase you out. Xian Ziwen growled again. All right, he Kaitu knew he could not go against his own teacher and relented. After loosening his grip, he jumped before Xian Ziwen and in front of Huo Yuhao. If he wanted to do anything to Huo Yuhao, he would have to go through him first. But to Kaitu's surprise, Xian Ziwen did not go straight for Huo Yuhao, nor did he attempt to lay his hands on him. Instead, he made his way to the other end of the bench in the laboratory. Kaitu wasn't sure what he was looking at. With his curiosity piqued by his actions, he Kaitu moved over and leaned in to steal a look. He realized there was a furnace, which was approximately 1 meter in diameter on the bench. It was a huge circular furnace 4 feet deep. Its ancient design looked majestic, and was surrounded by thick walls. There was a lid above which fit perfectly over the furnace. In fact, if not for the experience he had as a Class 8 soul engineer, he would have thought that the lid was part of the furnace. There was simply no crack, or lines for any air to escape. Is this the outer shell for the soul tool teacher Xian tasked Yuhao to build today? Didn't he promise that Yuhao would definitely not be able to finish it today? Unless Yuhao has pulled off another stunt again. With Kaitu's understanding of Huo Yuhao, he was certain that he would never submit an inferior product, just to get things over with. This meant that Huo Yuhao must have completed the product before falling asleep. No wonder teacher Xian seems to have changed his mind on Huo Yuhao. At this very instant, Xian Ziwen bent down, then leapt up onto the bench. Because the pill furnace was too big, it was impossible to catch a glimpse of the complete thing from below. The pill furnace was designed by Xian Ziwen from scratch. Hence, he naturally knew where all the nooks and crannies were. After tapping some places at the top of the furnace, Xian Ziwen activated the outer shell. After being activated, the pill furnace released a gush of hot air, which instantly increased the temperature within the room by a few degrees. The look on Xian Ziwen's face turned increasingly strange, as a look of disbelief slowly replaced his previous look of anger. What? How is it possible? I don't believe it. If he did not know for a fact that the Tang sect only had one Class 9 soul engineer, himself, he would have thought that Huo Yuhao had found someone to do it for him. But this was simply impossible. Cultivation ability was not enough to build a complete outer shell. It also required a deep understanding of soul tools. In fact, there were only 10 soul engineers that Xian Ziwen knew who could finish the outer shell in a single day. Most importantly, all of them were in the Sun Moon Empire. How did this brat do it? Unless he's already become a 9-ringed title Doluo. No, that's impossible. Xian Ziwen took a deep breath as he leapt off the bench. He Kai-Tu scrutinized his teacher's expression and knew his guess was correct. He broke into an awkward smile. It seems like talent is more important than hard work. Of course, this doesn't undermine the importance of hard work. Teacher Xian, you don't have to say anything to me. I'm going to get my dinner now. You can chat with Yuhao without worrying about me. After finishing his sentence, Kai-Tu skipped off. As he stared at Kai-Tu's back, Xian Ziwen also broke into an awkward smile. He was originally the one who had wanted to teach Huo Yuhao a lesson. But somehow, it now seemed like Huo Yuhao would be the one teaching him a lesson. As he thought about this, he could not help but feel a little frustrated. While all of this was going on, Huo Yuhao started to wake up. After all, it would have been very difficult for anyone to sleep through this commotion. As he opened his blurry eyes, he noticed Xian Ziwen standing in the room. Teacher Xian, you've returned. What time is it now? To be honest, Huo Yuhao did not consciously decide to fall asleep. He was just too tired after absorbing all the memories and going through them to learn the technique. His soul felt drained, and hence he fell asleep unknowingly. Of course, all of this was after he had persevered through the task at hand. Even though he was fully awake now, the mysterious carving technique still appeared to be flitting before his eyes, as though he was still going through the newly acquired memories. Xian Ziwen's face did not look very friendly as he asked, "Did you make this outer shell?" Huo Yuhao nodded and replied, "Yes." Xian Ziwen asked, "What about the leftover Scarlet Devil essence?" "I put it away over there." Huo Yuhao pointed towards a corner of the laboratory. Xian Ziwen spoke calmly, "Is this the kind of work you submit? I didn't know you accepted lousy and inferior products." Huh? Huo Yuhao's jaw dropped. With his newly learned Rain Dragon's dance carving technique, the unbelievably sharp ghost carving godly blade, and his carving skills, the product was perfect in his eyes. In fact, Huo Yuhao believed that this outer shell was the most exquisite soul tool he had ever built. How could it be lousy and inferior? It's getting dark. Let's go and grab our dinner. After saying this, Xian Ziwen turned and left. He did not ask any more questions, because he was afraid that his heart might not be able to take it. However, he had completely recognized Huo Yuhao as a student of Shrek Academy in his heart. What a freak. Arth? During dinner time, Huo Yuhao bumped into Kai-Tu, and he noticed how Kai-Tu's stare was a little more peculiar than usual. Nonetheless, he did not think too much about it. He naturally looked for Tang Wutong the moment teacher Xian gave him permission to leave for dinner. With Wutong around, how could he notice anyone else? After finishing his dinner, Huo Yuhao went over to look for Xian Ziwen and pleaded cheerfully, "Teacher Xian, now that I have finished the task you have given me, do you think I can go back to my room to cultivate tonight? You must understand that at the end of the day, I am still a soul master. I must not neglect my own training." As he looked at Huo Yuhao and Tang Wutong, who was holding his hand, Xian Ziwen nodded unwillingly before leaving. Even until now, Xian Ziwen was not fully convinced of Yuhao's work. The lad must have played a clever trick. There must be something wrong with the outer shell. Huo Yuhao naturally did not know what teacher Xian was thinking. He was happily galloping away with Tang Wutong back to his room. The scent from Tang Wutong's body was enough to make him feel very comfortable. Tang Wutong's face started to blush as her heart started to beat faster and faster. Once they reached his room, Huo Yuhao quickly closed the door and activated a spiritual barrier, which cut off all connections within the room from the outer world. Tang Wutong naturally knew what he was doing as she took a few steps back in surprise. "What are you doing?" Huo Yuhao gave her a naughty laugh. Have you heard of the story of the big bad wolf and the sheep? Today, the big bad wolf will not let you go. Tang Wutong was amused by Huo Yuhao's words, as she burst into laughter. When a rabbit gets anxious, it will bite too. Huo Yuhao's smile became even more wicked as he replied, "Bring it on. I'm not afraid of you." As he spoke, he pounced towards Tang Wutong like a hungry wolf. Tang Wutong giggled and stepped aside agilely. Her figure flickered as she completely avoided Huo Yuhao's pounce. It was a perfect execution of the Tang sect's Ghost Shadow Perplexing track. The Ghost Shadow Perplexing track. I know that too. Huo Yuhao laughed as he increased his speed. Countless figures started to pounce towards Tang Wutong. Tang Wutong was shocked beyond belief. How bad can this guy get? Huo Yuhao not only used the Ghost Shadow Perplexing track, but also executed imitation and spiritual interference. This filled the whole room with multiple Huo Yuhaos. It was immensely difficult for Tang Wutong to differentiate between the real and fake ones in such a short period of time. After all, she could not punch them to tell them apart, right? Hence, before she could even react, she was already in Huo Yuhao's embrace. His little sheep was finally in his embrace. Huo Yuhao was unbelievably excited. After they had finally reunited, he had not shared any particularly intimate moments with Tang Wutong. Now that he had finally hugged her, she had nowhere to run or hide. As he gazed at her blushing face, Huo Yuhao found himself unable to resist the temptation before him. Very quickly, he moved his lips towards hers. As their lips came closer, it seemed like the room was about to become a stage for the pair of passionate lovers. However, just when Huo Yuhao's lips were about a millimeter away from Wutong's, Huo Yuhao felt a frightening aura from her body, following which, the golden light flashed before his eyes as he was thrown across the room and into the wall by a powerful force. After colliding with the wall at the far end of the room, he slid down the surface of the wall like a wall painting that was falling off. This force not only acted on his body, but also impacted his soul. He felt as though he had just suffered a spiritual attack, something he was not unfamiliar with. His body felt as though it had just been rammed by a mountain. The pain that was rippling through his soul and body turned Huo Yuhao's face into a wrinkled mess. What just happened? A scream escaped from Tang Wutong's mouth as she flew over to Huo Yuhao's side to help him up. "Yuhao, are you all right?" Tang Wutong's concerned voice made Huo Yuhao's heart ache. He squeezed out a smile and replied, "My dear, how could you be so cruel? Even if you don't want me to kiss you, there's no need to be so violent, right?" It was as if the fiery passion in his heart had been doused by a pail of cold water. The pain which his body was feeling was secondary compared to the pain felt by his heart. Tang Wutong's eyes started to become teary as she lamented, No, it wasn't me. I didn't stop you from kissing me. It was my father who didn't want you to kiss me." "What?" Huo Yuhao's jaw dropped. "This concerns my future father-in-law." As he saw the tears in Tang Wutong's eyes, his heart softened immediately. He asked, "So what's going on?" Tang Wutong raised her hand and pointed at the faint golden trident mark on her forehead. She explained, "My father is worried that I would be taken advantage of in the outside world, and left a seal on my body. If anyone were to attempt to take advantage of my body, the rune would attack the person automatically." Huo Yuhao gaped with wonder. Then why was the seal ineffective when we were facing the dragon god Doluo? Tang Wutong awkwardly replied, "Well, he wasn't intending to violate me." This future father-in-law doesn't seem to be very helpful. Why must he interfere with the things couples do? Even though Huo Yuhao was fairly furious, there was nothing which he could really say about it. He could only console Tang Wutong, "Come on, Wutong. Don't cry. Don't worry about it. I'm not blaming you. Look at how strong my body is. It's just another fall." "I didn't know that's how things would unfold," Tang Wutong replied apologetically. "When my father gave me the seal, I still hadn't regained my memory. I really didn't know. I will definitely ask my father to remove the seal the next time I see him." Even though Huo Yuhao knew he shouldn't be too anxious about this, he still couldn't help but ask when Tang Wutong would be able to see her father again. She replied, I really don't know. It's so hard to find my father. No one really knows where he is. Huo Yuhao felt his heart wrench after hearing her reply. My future father-in-law, how could you do this to me? It's one thing for you to be hard to locate, but it's an entirely different matter to interfere with my blissful life with Wutong. However, Tang Wutong added, anyways, he will definitely appear on the day of our marriage. Marriage. This term seemed to be a fairly distant concept for Huo Yuhao. After pausing for a while, he replied, Wutong, then when shall we get married? Both of us have been through so much, and it has taken so much from me to find you back. Why don't you marry me now? I can't spend a day of my life without you. Tang Wutong appeared to be lost as she replied, I will never leave you. Besides, we are still a little young to be married to one another, right? Huo Yuhao sighed in disbelief. My dear, I am already slow enough. How did you also become slow after losing your memories? Before you lost your memory, we could still at the very least kiss one another. But now, we can't even kiss anymore. However, at this very instant, Huo Yuhao suddenly had an idea. His eyes appeared to be energized by the idea that hit him. My dear, do you know exactly how powerful your seal is? It seems like it has no qualms with me hugging you. Tang Wutong blushed and replied, how would I know? Huo Yuhao was evidently excited by her reply. He replied, why don't we test it by doing some experiments? When the people above us implement restrictions on people like us, there are bound to be ways for us to circumvent these things. Perhaps your father is not as tyrannical as we think. Tang Wutong was very sympathetic towards Huo Yuhao after his fall earlier. She could not bear to reject him, after seeing the longing in his eyes, as she nodded to give her consent. Huo Yuhao was over the moon as he exclaimed, my dear is still the best. As he finished his sentence, he pounced towards her like a hungry wolf. Ah! After 3 seconds, when Huo Yuhao increased the intensity of his hug, his scream could be heard once again. Fortunately, he had set up the spiritual barrier earlier. And screams were destined to be part of the theme for the night. It appeared that kisses were not allowed. Overly intense hugs were also not allowed. Certain areas on the body were also not allowed to be touched. They were not even allowed to lie side by side on the bed to rest. Huo Yuhao was merely lying on the bed to alleviate the pain in his body when the golden light shone again. In the end, Huo Yuhao could only focus on cultivating the Haodong power, with Tang Wutong on the bed while nursing the bruises he had sustained in his experiments. It was only when they were cultivating that the strange seal did not act up. Huo Yuhao was furious. Damn it! How can my future father-in-law be so unreasonable? Can someone tell me how can I not be angry? But he knew it was futile to be angry about it. There was nothing he could do about it. All he could do was suffer in silence and wait till Wutong's father returned. Huo Yuhao had made up his mind to formally propose to Tang Wutong only after he had achieved a certain level of learning and understanding of soul tools under Xian Ziwen and graduated from Shrek Academy. However, there was a certain sense of unease which constantly lurked at the back of his head. A father-in-law who leaves such seals on his daughter will probably be difficult to deal with. And he knew well enough that this future father-in-law was probably very powerful. Huo Yuhao had previously asked Tang Wutong about him, but she was adamant to keep his information a secret. She explained how knowing more about her father would only damage their future relationship. Hence, Huo Yuhao had no choice but to stop asking. Thus, what was meant to be a blissful night ended up as a night full of injuries for Huo Yuhao. Fortunately, he had good regenerative abilities and took only a night to recover. Nonetheless, it was still very painful for him to not be able to touch his loved one. It was only at the next morning when Huo Yuhao finally managed to console himself. No matter what, it was already a lot better to have Wutong beside him than not having her at all. As long as she was well, there was no good reason for him to be unhappy. You've finally arrived, eh? Xian Ziwen asked in an unfriendly tone as he glared at Huo Yuhao, who was just entering the laboratory, with blood-red eyes. Huo Yuhao wasn't in a very good mood either. Even though he didn't have bloodshot eyes, he was visibly tired. "Can you stop acting so uppity about it, you little rascal?" Xian Zuan suddenly growled. "Huh? When did I start doing that?" Huo Yuhao was confused by Xian Zuan's words. Xian Zuan snorted before jabbing at the outer shell. He asked, "Tell me. How did you do it? How did you do it in just one day? One single day? I don't believe you managed to pull it off without getting any external help." Huo Yuhao sat on the chair and answered, "I can't do anything about it if you don't believe me. You can only blame yourself for not being around when I was carving it yesterday." "You?" Xian Zuan had spent the entire night trying to find flaws in the outer shell, to no avail. "All right. It seems like you're a tough nut to crack, eh? Now I want you to follow the papers and start on the formation arrays. You will be in charge of the entire process from now on." Xian Zuan jabbed at the thick stack of formation arrays, and informed Huo Yuhao of his new task viciously. Huo Yuhao's eyes widened in disbelief as he replied, "You can't do this to me, Teacher Xian. This is a Class 9 soul tool. I have just barely grazed the door of a Class 8 soul engineer. Aren't you very capable?" Xian Zuan replied coldly, "Just get on with it. I will be sure to sit around and watch you materialize it. This pill furnace has a total of 13 main formation arrays. Every single one of them is formed from a combination of 9 Class 8 formation arrays. I will only let you leave after you make at least one of them. If not, you can prepare to sleep, eat and shit in this laboratory." Coupled with last night's unfortunate events, Xian Zuan's tyrannical instructional method had angered Huo Yuhao. "So be it. So what will happen if I am able to construct one formation array?" Huo Yuhao asked rebelliously. Xian Zuan let out a sinister laugh. "If you are able to make one of them, you will then carry on and complete the other 12 formation arrays. Following which, you will assist me to assemble the pill furnace. When all of the above is done, I will give you a day off." If not for his fear of wasting the blood in his stomach, Huo Yuhao would have spat a mouthful of blood onto Xian Zuan's face. "Who's afraid of that? I don't believe it's impossible to finish." Huo Yuhao gave a defiant answer. After witnessing how powerful the Rain Dragon's dance carving technique was, Huo Yuhao was brimming with confidence. The ghost carving godly blade was unbelievably powerful and mystical. Huo Yuhao not only made the outer shell yesterday, but also did a series of experiments with the blade. The result of his experiments proved that the blade was not only invincibly sharp, but also blind towards any element. This meant that it was able to slice through any material effortlessly regardless of its element. Huo Yuhao believed that it would not be unfair to rank this as the number 1 carving blade after witnessing its dominating display. One must understand that it was of the utmost importance for soul engineers to understand the element and type of material that was being handled in order to apply the appropriate carving techniques during the construction of soul tools. Every different kind of rare metal had its own special set of considerations. They were all tough in different ways. Coupled with their specific element types, it was extraordinarily difficult for soul engineers to exact their designs onto these metals. Powerful soul tools tended to utilize rare metals, which were particularly strong and unorthodox. Their unorthodox characteristics usually meant they required unorthodox methods. That was why Class 9 soul engineers required the abilities of a 9-ringed titled Doluor. It did not only require one to possess a titled Doluor's ability to use them, but also the copious amount of soul power to impress and carve on these rare metals. Most importantly, high-level formation arrays required one to finish the entire construction process in a single attempt. The ghost carving godly blade had undeniably solved this problem to a huge extent. Huo Yuhao no longer had to consider the different element types of the different rare metals, and this was enough to grant him a huge advantage in the construction of formation arrays. Besides, he had the support of the Rain Dragon's dance carving technique, an equally powerful carving technique. Huo Yuhao held up the first diagram for the formation array and studied it carefully. One first had to understand the formation array in order to begin carving it. How was a soul engineer supposed to build something without understanding it? He or she would not know where to pay greater attention to. And this studying of diagrams consumed almost half of the day. Because Xian Ziwen wanted to know what the mysterious method Huo Yuhao employed to build soul tools was, he planned to stay for the whole day to not only invigilate the process, but also to satiate his curiosity. However, Huo Yuhao managed to sit for half a day. Xian Ziwen was rather pleased with that. At least this kid isn't impatient, and is quite clear about the basics. Given his spiritual power and intelligence, it shouldn't be too difficult for him to understand the core formation of a Class 9 soul tool. However, Xian Ziwen started to be unable to take it after observing Huo Yuhao for some time. He didn't sleep almost the entire night. He was feeling a little fatigued by now. As a result, he unwittingly leaned on the laboratory desk and fell asleep. He slept rather well. The Tang sect's Soul Tool Hall was now on the right track. What Xian Ziwen needed to attend to was only some of his own research. He was much more relaxed compared to before. However, he still had high expectations for himself. It was his first time sleeping in the day for many years. If he slept well, he would be in better spirits too. When Xian Ziwen woke up from his nap, he only felt recharged and extremely comfortable. However, there was no one in the laboratory when he opened his eyes. Yes, there was no one else apart from him. Huo Yuhao had left to some unknown place. This rascal. Did he flee? Xian Ziwen was astonished. If Huo Yuhao really wanted to leave, he really had no choice to. If he ran away, Xian Ziwen was certainly unable to bring him back. Xian Ziwen leapt up in astonishment and rushed out to find Huo Yuhao. At this moment, the door to the laboratory opened, and Huo Yuhao walked leisurely in. Rascal, what are you doing? Did my words fall on deaf ears? Didn't I say that you can't go out? Huo Yuhao snapped, Teacher Xian, you told me to eat, poop and sleep in here. However, I must be able to do all these first. You don't even have a grain of rice here. I can't possibly starve myself. I'm the flower of this empire, yet to fully bloom. I need nutrition. I only went to get some food from the canteen. I brought some for you too. As he spoke, he carefully placed the lunch boxes in his hand on the table before taking one box for himself and digging in. Xian Ziwen didn't even realize that he had maligned Huo Yuhao, and only grabbed one lunchbox before starting to stuff himself with food. The food in the Tang sect had always been good. After sleeping an entire afternoon, it felt really comfortable to stuff himself with delicacies. Very soon, he finished all his food. To defend his honor as a man, Xian Ziwen took the initiative to clear the boxes and utensils. As he cleared up, he asked Huo Yuhao, have you learned something after seeing the blueprints for an entire afternoon? Oh, I'm doing pretty well. I'm getting ready to start on my second core formation. Huo Yuhao replied. Xian Ziwen glared at him and said, it's not good to be greedy. Digest the first one before going to the next. Each of these 13 core formations is different. Each of them. As he spoke until here, he couldn't continue anymore. This was because Huo Yuhao had stuffed a metal ball the size of a tangerine into his hand. This metal ball was hollow, and there were lights shining inside of it. There seemed to be some kind of circulation within its complicated structure, based on the principles of heaven and earth. You've come up with this first core formation. Xian Ziwen's voice changed slightly. He was just like an adolescent whose voice broke for the first time. Huo Yuhao answered, yes. It's not that difficult. I'm already on my second one. As he spoke, he started reading the second blueprint. Xian Ziwen grabbed the first core formation, and started to frantically search for something on the laboratory table. Indeed, he found a patch of dense powder. It was something that was definitely left behind during the creation of a core formation. Huo Yuhao took an afternoon to understand the core formation of a Class 9 soul tool and finish constructing it. This time, Xian Ziwen was the one who wanted to vomit blood. He knew that he wasn't capable of this. The creation of the core formation didn't drain as much soul power as carving the outer shell. However, the details were much finer. He managed to complete it. No, that's impossible. Xian Zuan quickly raised the core formation in his hand and used all the methods that he knew to analyze its structure. He did all he could to find a flaw or a problem with it. 2 hours passed, but he didn't find anything wrong. There was no problem. How is this possible? How is this possible? Whatever was going on with Huo Yuhao completely violated the principles of a soul master's development. Yes, it was a violation. Xian Zuan couldn't believe that this was real. He took a serious look at Huo Yuhao, who was invested in the second blueprint by now. His heart was contorting. However, Xian Zuan was determined not to miss out on watching Huo Yuhao create his second core formation. He had to watch it and find out for himself how Huo Yuhao managed to magically create a core formation in such a short period of time. He had to have some special method. A determined Xian Zuan was full of willpower. He just sat there and opened his eyes wide as he watched Huo Yuhao. He didn't neglect the smallest of details. He was just watching like that. Huo Yuhao was a little creeped out as he was being watched so intently. He occasionally took a glance at Xian Zuan. However, he still thought that the blueprint he was reading was much more mesmerizing. He only put the blueprint of the second core formation down in the evening. He stood up and stretched. He even let out a comfortable groan. Are you done? Xian Zuan asked. Huo Yuhao nodded. Xian Zuan asked, do you understand? Yes. Huo Yuhao nodded seriously. What are you waiting for then? Why aren't you striking when the iron is hot, and working on the core formation? Xian Zuan screamed. Huo Yuhao appeared a little indignant. But it's dinner time. I'll go and grab dinner first. I'll start after dinner. Xian Zuan was anxious as he said, I can help you collect dinner. As he spoke, he turned into a complete gentleman and left the laboratory with the lunchboxes. However, there was some discrepancy in their judgment of when mealtime was, such that Xian Zuan waited a good 15 minutes in the canteen before he came back with food. He was even rushing the staff in the canteen. Along with some delays in the journey, he took a total of 30 minutes. Xian Zuan was a little depressed. If I knew it was going to take so long, I would have let that kid go and collect dinner. At least he can relax for a bit. I wonder if he has started with the core formation. It's fine if he started, but if he's skiving while I'm collecting dinner, HMPH. As he returned, Xian Zuan saw Huo Yuhao sitting exactly where he was before. Huo Yuhao was shaking his head, as if he were thinking of something. However, there was nothing in his hands. They were empty. Well done, rascal. Do you really take me as your manual laborer? You didn't even do anything at all. Xian Zuan was unhappy as he threw the lunchboxes at Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao jumped in shock. He quickly caught the lunchboxes. Teacher, what are you doing? Xian Zuan was furious. I went to collect dinner so that you'd have more time to work on your core formation. I didn't leave you to rest. I'm done. Huo Yuhao appeared very innocent as he spoke. You're done. Where? Xian Zuan was in disbelief. Huo Yuhao grabbed a metal ball from the side of the table and presented it to Xian Zuan, here. Xian Zuan subconsciously received the metal ball. He lowered his head and took a look at it. When he saw it, his eyes opened wide. This? He couldn't be bothered with scolding Huo Yuhao anymore. He quickly sat down at one side and analyzed the metal ball. A sneaky smile flashed across Huo Yuhao's face. He placed the lunchboxes on the table and started to dig in. He had been using a lot of his energy over the past day. After he finished his food, he said very naturally, Teacher Xian, I'm almost done with all my work today. I'll go back and rest first. Goodbye. Okay. Xian Zuan's attention was all on the metal ball. He agreed subconsciously, and Huo Yuhao quickly fled. Xian Zuan didn't even react. He had mentioned that he wasn't going to let Huo Yuhao go earlier, but he couldn't be bothered now, as he was too dumbfounded by the metal ball in his hand. This was the second core formation out of the 13 core formations needed for the pill furnace. A complete second core formation. Just by touching it, Xian Ziwen could sense from the soul power undulations from the ball that it was free of problems. It was exactly what he wanted. He checked the details carefully, and hoped to find some kind of flaw with it. However, everything was in vain. This core formation was perfect. It was comparable to the first core formation earlier. How is this possible? How is it possible? This is a core formation for a Class 9 soul tool. Even though a pill furnace wasn't considered one of the more complex Class 9 soul tools, and only barely made it as a Class 9 soul tool, it was still a Class 9 soul tool. Generally speaking, a Class 9 soul engineer would need at least 3 months to half a year to complete a Class 9 soul tool, even if he was completely prepared. One of the most important reasons was that the core formations of a Class 9 soul tool was simply too complex. Some mistakes were bound to be made during the process of creating them. When the soul engineer had to start over, resources and time would be wasted. As a result, the soul engineer had to be extremely focused, and try to keep his energy level at its maximum. This was so that he could finish the core formations, and ensure the greatest success rate. Xian Ziwen hadn't had time to teach Huo Yuhao yet. He wanted to let Huo Yuhao fail once first, and use the failure to teach him. This would make him remember his mistakes more clearly. However, who knew that Huo Yuhao wouldn't give him the chance to let him fail? This video will end here.